Tech heads, back once again. We return after a 2-week hiatus to bring you a quick look at the fundamentals of front-end web development. That's right, we're hitting the surfaces of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Don't be too scared. It's an evening edition, which means we're kicking back and slamming a couple drinks too. I also share some big news at the end of the episode. This is Tech Heads.
4, 3, 2, 1.
So, here we go.
How you all feel tonight?
Get started.
I'm gonna crack this open right now. There you go.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers, yeah.
Cheers.
Tech Heads, back again after a long 2-week break for us. We're bringing you, what is this, episode 7, and it's an early evening edition. It's an evening edition for you, but early evening edition for me, which is obviously out of the ordinary because it's usually 8 a.m. for me when we record.
Yeah.
But anyways, how was your break, Anna?
It was good. I took advantage of it by studying and getting some school stuff out of the way. Now it's really getting close. I mean, I have about, 6 weeks left, of the spring term. So very excited to get that, down to none. I can't wait to finish these classes, and then move on to the next thing. But it was nice to have, a little bit of break so we could, I think, come up with ideas for, future episodes. So I know that we had conversations. So, for our listeners, stay tuned. There's some, interesting things happening soon, and we'll share more when we can.
Oh, yeah. And we'll do another maybe interview series or whatever that trifecta of interviews was. That was super fun getting other people on. But we're gonna do a few more where it's just us, and then I actually do have somebody in mind. I haven't made it happen yet. I haven't messaged them or DM'd them or anything, but if we get this person, this is going to be huge.
Oh, really?
And I could see it happening. So, well, because they're not exactly high profile. So, it'll be a big deal for us. Maybe not such a big deal for anybody else, but it'll be kind of cool. No, it has nothing to do with cat coffee, but.
What do you mean? It's not Elon Musk? Yeah. But so how was your break? What did you do?
It was good. What did we do?
I know you shared that link of a project that you were working on. Is that what you did for these past 2 days?
That's right. I totally forgot about that. Thank you for bringing that up. I did, so obviously, I like to budget, and I like to use Excel and do a bunch of number crunching on my own time, but I don't like to do it on my phone, which is something that I feel like I have to do a lot because if I have some sort of expense, then I like to put it in as soon as possible so I don't forget about it. Otherwise, I have to go into my credit card account and check all the things and then manually add them all in one by one. It gets kind of annoying. So I was like, man, maybe I should check out another budgeting app instead of using Excel. And then I was like, you know what? It'd be way more fun to just make my own. So I have a demo right now, and it's, so far sort of functional. I don't know. I think you checked it out, right?
I did. Yeah, no, I tried it out and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And that's why I brought it up really because of, our topic for today. And I think you used HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for that, right? So
you bet I did. That's all it is. I didn't use anything fancy whatsoever. I wanted to keep it super simple.
Right.
Yeah, so it basically allows me to just put in expenses on the go easier, but it's gonna. I have a bunch of ideas for it. I just wanted to get it started so I don't keep putting it off. So I wanted to take advantage of the break.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are actually talking about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript today.
Woohoo! Hold on to your hats.
Oh yeah. So these are, I guess you could say these are the big three. Or it's like the foundational coding languages of the internet, and you can't be a front-end developer without at least learning these three. So before we even actually get into what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are, I want to share something that I came across the other day that actually might paint a picture for people who have no knowledge whatsoever in this field. So you can think of HTML as a construction worker, CSS as an artist, and JavaScript as a wizard.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool?
That is neat.
I saw that. I was like, oh, that is such an easy way to put it. So HTML is like Bob the Builder. CSS is like
Andy Warhol.
Paul Cezanne,
Pablo Picasso.
Degas, Renoir, all those people. And JavaScript is like Harry Potter or Gandalf.
Yeah, right. That's really well put, actually, because I think the analogy that I heard when I did before I started doing the boot camp or whatever, it was that the HTML were the bones of the site, CSS was the skin, and then JavaScript is what made it all move together. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I think that, because like we're going to get into it, but that's essentially still how I see it. But like you said, it can be so many different things as long as you understand what each one of, and like what the role of each one is,
Yeah, I like your analogy a little better because all three of those things seem to like
work well together, right?
Yeah, like clearly, obviously, a Bob the Builder, Paul Cezanne, and a Gandalf aren't gonna be in a bar together.
Yeah,
but
right.
They are essential to actually making a web page work. So let's see. Starting with HTML, it's essentially how the web page is structured and defined, like the content on the page. So this includes text, images, links, basically the overall structure of the page. And using tags, which are these bracket things with some sort of letter in the tag, such as a P for paragraph, an H for header, followed by a number, depending on the size of it. It's basically with these tags, you can define where elements go on a page. And that's why it's called Hypertext Markup Language, the HTML. That's what it stands for. Because you're literally telling the computer with HTML how to actually display the elements. So for instance, if I wanted to add a header to the page that says the name of the page, I would say, bracket H1, the other side of the bracket, which they look like greater than and less than signs if you don't know what a bracket is. But the H1 bracket tag, and then inside the tag, I would just type the name of whatever the page is, like, Victor's blog, and then followed by the closing version of the tag, which is just the less than sign, the slash, the H1, and then the second thing of the bracket. So it's, there's so many different tags. It's super, super simple to learn because there's not really much. I mean, there is a lot behind it. You can be a master of it, and you can also be a beginner in it. But it is a super, super easy one to pick up for sure. And you can actually even go to any site that you want and see this stuff for yourself by just right-clicking on the page anywhere and clicking Inspect. And that is all HTML on the page that you're on. And you can even mess with HTML if you want on the page to make... You can make Google say booble. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. And then, of course, nobody else is going to see what you did because this stuff isn't saved globally. So you're going to be the only one who sees it and changes it. And whenever you do refresh the page, it's probably going to be gone. Mm-hmm. But a fun fact that I came across was that HTML was actually invented in 1991 by a physicist by the name of Tim Berners-Lee at CERN.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and of course CERN is obviously known for finding the Higgs boson particle, which is obviously awesome. But yeah, that's also the what would be the word, like what's the Mayflower rock that they landed on?
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember.
Oh God. Hey, Dylan, can you Google something for me?
Fact checking.
She's off the clock, and I'm just telling her, where did the Plymouth Rock?
Right?
Yes, thank you. Perfect.
Yeah.
She didn't even need the internet for that one. She's so smart. But anyway, yeah, he introduced HTML with 18 different tags, and now there's 140. But of course, some of them are a little outdated because this was the 90s, and some browsers aren't really compatible with it. So I think it's crazy that one. I mean, obviously, that goes back to anything being invented, that it goes back to one person who started it all. But I don't know, especially this. It's just something that is so powerful and huge, but
Yeah.
the everyday person might not really know what it is, HTML. So it is kind of crazy that he just made this happen for all of us, and is the reason we can read stuff on screens.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I really couldn't have, I think, laid it all more, better than you'd have, because that covered pretty much everything, that I was going to share about my understanding of HTML too. So I just had no idea that it had come from CERN. I mean, those people are just like geniuses, inventing things, just casually, colliding particles, coming up with, things that we don't even think about. Like, oh, geez, it's insane. But no, I think it's very cool, what you said about the fact that, HTML it's the bare bones, of a site. Anyone with access to a computer can create a web page right now. It might not be visible to everybody. It might just be visible to, to the creator. But if you create a page, and just save it with the .html extension, whatever text you have on there will show on your browser when you open it with the browser. So that's a really, really cool thing, that I think web development is, something that you can get that like instant gratification, because you can do something, with HTML, you can create something so quick. So yeah, I mean, you covered pretty much, like I said, what I was going to discuss too about tags, the variety of them, there are so many. And I think for the purpose of, our episode, we can just, leave it at that. For people who want to look deeper into it, then there are so many tags and it really depends on what you're trying to do on the page. So we'll list out some references later on. And the tags control the positioning of the elements, not just the positioning, but what the element contains, like what kind of text or color. You can do that. And on a HTML file, you can also link to the CSS file that we'll get to, and also your script, for JavaScript. So it all starts with HTML. That's really kind of like the trendsetter, I would say.
Yeah, and I don't know about your cohort from the boot camp, but just to paint a picture of how easy it is, I mean, we were given pre-work before we could actually go to the boot camp and start, which involved HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, not too deeply, but a little bit of JavaScript. So, all of these things are things that you don't need to do any sort of education for. You can just learn it. Mm-hmm. And HTML, I don't know. I think I would say it's the easiest of everything. Yeah. Because it's so intuitive and simple, and it's literally just text. There's really nothing insane going on with straight up HTML. Of course, you have all your nice tools that actually create, better HTML. You have the Bootstrap, and you have, frameworks that do the JavaScripts and your CSSs, like, everything. But we're not going to burden anybody with all that stuff just yet. We're just going to cover the super simple basics. Exactly. So moving on to CSS, I guess, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, I think.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, that's what I thought. This is where the actual HTML is stylized to give it some character, make the page look really nice. As we said, it's the artist of the whole big three, I guess we can call it. Mm-hmm. Who are the big three in Greek mythology? Is it
I would say Aristotle's in there.
No,
like philosophers.
No, he's a
all
philosopher.
The gods.
Yeah. Who is it? Like Zeus and Hades and who's the big three of mythology? She's like, I'm not your number cruncher anymore.
Man, I took like one Greek history class or humanities course, and I just don't understand anything about like mythology other than like the philosophers, But even if you ask me
Yeah.
what Aristotle said, I'd be like, I don't know, man. He was just very important.
But anyway, yeah, this is where you can, define the font that you're going to use on the page. I mean, you can also do that in HTML. A lot of these things that we're going to be mentioning, there you can do it any other way, but this is just traditionally how it's done. So you might define the font, the positioning, the sizing of elements, and even the colors, of course. That's super important. And even these days, you can do a little bit of transitioning with CSS.
Right. Yep.
Maybe even a lot of things that JavaScript would handle, you can actually do with CSS now. So that's, it all gets kind of into this gray area between the two if you're comparing two languages of the three. But for the most part, CSS is really just going to handle what it's going to look like in the sense of like colors and font and sizing and all that stuff. So basically how it works is, if you want to picture it, let's say you, like going back to the header example that I mentioned before, Victor's blog, if I used a header tag and called it Victor's blog, if I want to call the header in my CSS file and I want to change it purple or something, I would just say period, or no, you would just do H1, because you don't need to do a period or a hashtag or anything like that. But you would just do the H1 with followed by the curly bracket, and then you would say color colon, whatever color you want. So as far as understanding CSS, that's really like the simplest way to think about it, I guess. You're just making things have color and character, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, like as far as like the structure goes, it really doesn't get more simple than that. Obviously, like you said, with the period and the hash symbol, that it depends if you have HTML tags that have like a class or an ID. And that's, I think a more detailed topic for today. But yeah, that's as far as it goes. You just, refer to the name of the HTML tag that or the element that you're talking about. And then you set a property and a value, and then boom, that's what you need. I think when I started the boot camp, the first project that we had was to create a portfolio page with plain HTML and CSS. And oh my God, I hated it.
That was brutal, wasn't it? I am not a front end person, really. Like,
no way. It was really tough because of it wasn't the styling, the HTML, it was fine. But once I got into the CSS, and because they gave us a mock-up of what they wanted it to look like, the positioning of the elements, relative to themselves and other elements, it was just crazy. Like every time I touch something with CSS, is like that one meme with the blinds when the guy is like, you pull one side, the other one raises up, you have like broken blinds everywhere. That's how I felt. Honestly, that was me. I think I had to scrap the project once after spending hours, because I pulled like an all-nighter for 2 days just to make sure that, I was going to finish it. And the end product was okay. It wasn't exactly what, they were looking for, but it was very close. But man, yeah, that was, I was about to like slam my head on the keyboard because it was just brutal when I got to the CSS.
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime I was in the same boat as you, by the way. Like, I think I restarted that probably like 3 or 4 times. But I don't know, like for quite a while, I felt that anytime I was doing something front end, which, is the visual aspect of a web page, to put it simply, whenever I was responsible for doing anything front end, it was rough for me because it felt like I was botching it and like just making it look good, but the code was awful. Like if one thing went wrong, then everything else would break, which isn't really how it should be. It should all be, cohesive, but also somewhat independent of one another in case you want to change something around. It shouldn't be like this big house of cards where if you pull one thing, everything breaks. So the positioning of elements is actually like a really big skill to have, because when you're moving these these invisible blocks, which you can, it's called a div. It's kind of difficult to do that without knowing all the little tricks and everything, which I'm not going to mention, but they're invisible when you're actually testing your code and looking on the browser. You can't really see where everything is. So later on in your project, when you're adding something else, it might just like reverse everything and then split it in half and move it onto a different section of the whole page entirely. So it is really important to understand, certain methods of actually organizing your page, like Flexbox and I forgot what's the other one, Flexbox and.
Isn't it just like CSS grid?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I know that for like HTML and CSS, I had very little to like I had very little time to, I think that I worked with it even during the boot camp, because when we had our team projects, I always just said, oh no, can I work on like the back end stuff?
Same.
Because after that experience with CSS, I was kind of scarred for life.
Same. I was always back end.
Yeah. I think, because I did the boot camp now 4 years ago, there are definitely other ways to approach it that make it way more, friendly, I think, for people to learn. But there's a true, I think, art to knowing how to do raw CSS, just like, vanilla JavaScript, which we'll also get to it later. In HTML even, like not just the going to a site and copying the code on there, like trying to figure that out on your own is probably the best way, because, programming is like, you have to learn a little bit by struggling through that process. You definitely appreciate that. I think the process of learning it and trying to find resources that will help, rather than just copying someone else's, code or like a template or something. Because like you said, there are a lot of frameworks that makes life a lot easier, like Bootstrap and, other things out there. But there is, for like a beginner, there's nothing better than, just trying to figure it out, and, break shit. Like there's no harm in breaking an HTML page, like that's the way to learn, I feel like. But yeah, CSS is, it's one of those, I don't know. It still annoys me every now and then, but when you get it right, man, that feeling is unlike anything else.
Oh, without a doubt. Even my budget app right now, it's kind of a challenge to get exactly what I want. And even now it's not. It's still in demo phase because I'm probably never going to be satisfied with it anyway, but it's definitely in this mode where it works, as we call it. It's an MVP sort of thing right now, but it's definitely in the rough stages. I just want to get it just working to like the smallest degree that I can before I move on to bigger and better planning. But yeah, it was rough just getting it laid out exactly how I wanted. And like we said, it's, it is sort of easy to learn these things, but it is hard to like get it right and get it perfect. So
yeah. I think I forgot to mention to you that this week I've had a portfolio page for the longest time, right? And I haven't been really updating it, and I really was not too fond of the look because it was just very plain. And I know you have a very nice one. So what I decided to do to buy myself some time was to create, I want to keep my domain, obviously, was to just create an under construction page. You don't have to check it out now, but I just, put on a nice Northern Lights picture in the background, under construction with a little spinning gear symbol, and then my social media links. Because if, anyone ever goes on there, they can still find my pages. And for that, obviously, it was very simple HTML, nothing more than like 30 lines perhaps, but there was some CSS. And long and behold, here I am on Stack Overflow trying to understand how to make the elements work right, just on an under construction page. But yeah, because I noticed on my phone, the bottom div was dragging with the page or something, and I didn't want it to do that. So I just wanted to make sure that, it was kind of like
It was your positioning, probably. You were doing
it was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I had it like I didn't specify like the property and the value of like the positioning, so I just ended up doing absolute, and I think that fixed it. So yeah, it's very minimal, but it was cool. Honestly, that's why I was like, oh yeah, we should definitely do a HTML CSS episode, because I spent a couple hours earlier in the week just doing that. So I brought, my whole site down and just created an under construction page. And now I want to work on something, definitely custom. But I need to do some planning before. I just didn't want to, not have a page up or for some silly reason. So I just have my social media sort of links on there, and there you go. That's all, anyone needs if they want to check me out.
It's like what is it called? A link tree, where it's just the basic connecting links to get to like where you have social medias and other things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like the because I used the icons from Font Awesome. I don't know if
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you use the gear from Font Awesome, the moving gear?
I did. Yep. I used that. And then I used the little, the Git symbol for that links to my repo, the LinkedIn symbol, and then the one little envelope looking one for my email, so people can shoot me an email if they want to. But yeah, it's very, very basic.
Did you link the pod?
You know what? I should. Oh my God, that's a very good idea. I knew I was missing something. No, yeah, I will do that for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's what I just wanted to include on there instead of not having anything.
Yeah, you should put a player on there. Once you get everything situated on your site, once it's done under construction. But yeah, you should get a little player like mine has, and then all the links to everywhere you can actually listen to the podcast.
Right. Yeah, no, I'll definitely do that, because I am so envious of your page. I think it looks so good.
Oh, thank you.
But I know that you definitely keep up with it, and I can tell that you've put in a lot of work. For my previous one, I hadn't. So I really want to make that into a project. We'll see when I get to it, but I just don't want to leave it now under construction, and then it's like 5 years later and that thing is still spinning.
It's like the Dunder Mifflin webpage when it said like coming Christmas. And it was like 3 years before the episode came out.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that was too good. No, I'm not gonna let it, get to that stage, but I might get fancy with it, and I don't know, try to make like a Django app or whatever.
Yeah, or Gatsby.
Right. There are so many options, but yeah, I mean, for now it's just, good old HTML and CSS, not even JavaScript. So, that's what we got.
I guess we can move on to JavaScript then.
Yeah, let's do it.
How to explain JavaScript? That one's a funny one. I mean, we've said that it's the wizard of the big three. I guess simply put, it's what allows the user to actually interact with the page.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this includes pop-up messages, auto-completing, making buttons actually do their job and take you somewhere, or activate your account or something. Sliders, photo galleries, timers, animations, and way more, because JavaScript is such a beast.
Yeah, it is.
There's just so much you can do with it. We could do a whole episode on just another chapter of JavaScript. It's huge, but it includes obviously creating web and mobile apps, building web servers, and even like making games. So it does so much for everybody, and they don't even know what it is. And they might not even know like that it's different than Java.
Oh my God. So it still pains me to this day because that was a big misconception that I had when even started the boot camp. I was like, oh, Java, that's just like, what I think probably like a shortened name for JavaScript.
The cool kids call JavaScript Java.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then my instructor was like, no, big no, no. They have nothing to do with each other. And when I took a class at UF, doing Java, I was like, oh, this is what it is. Yeah. So,
Sad.
yeah, sad face. But, just recently, the class, the Intro to Software Engineering class that I'm taking, I have a group project that we're working on. And one of the guys let that slide. I didn't even bother to correct him. I was like, you go on ahead and you believe that Java and JavaScript are the same. They're not. But yeah, it's yeah, just to make it very clear, they're very different. And like you said, JavaScript is a big beast. I think it's been for the past several years like the language most widely used for everything. Like it's surpassed Java, which is a huge enterprise language that has been in use for many a number of years, and C++, C, like some of the backbone languages.
The
JavaScript that has
behemoths.
the behemoths. Yeah, right. JavaScript has been number one for the longest time, but why? Because people use the web. Like you're not going to download an app every time you want to use something. I mean, first of all, a company, if you really think about it, the first thing that they're gonna think about nowadays is not launching a phone app, is launching a website. How is a website built? With HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So we live online, and JavaScript is not going anywhere. And it's a language that you can do so much with. So I think that's why that's where the fun really begins when you get into web development, because with HTML and CSS, I think you can really get down to the mechanics of the site very quickly. You can hit the ground running, but when you get to JavaScript, because it is an actual, programming language that you have to put thought into, and there's, logic behind it, then it's where, I definitely, stumbled, I think, when I started working with it in the boot camp, because it's different. It's not like HTML and CSS. It's like, other programming languages like C and Python and Java. I don't mean like it, but it's an actual programming language. So it's, yeah, that's where I think you can struggle, but it's where you can really make the most happen. So yeah, it's a huge skill knowing how to use JavaScript.
Yeah, it's simply put, it's a scripting language that allows you to bring a level of interactivity to the user and make pages feel alive. So, once you do get past the HTML and CSS stage, you might be looking at the things that you're building and be like, oh, like I kind of wish this had a little life to it. It's just loading and everything is just there and nothing's happening. And, if you went to any web page like that you weren't involved in or anything, you might be like, what the heck? I'm not even gonna spend any more than the amount of time it took me to actually have the page load on this page. I'm gonna leave. So it brings a little character. It makes it feel like a fun little safe space, and it gives integrity to whatever message they're giving out, or if it's a company, it gives them some credibility. It shows that they know what they're doing and they care about the people's experience when they actually visit a site. And even deeper than that, of course, it's the hardest of the big three, because there is this deeper level of logical reasoning, like you said, and mathematical thinking behind it. But at the end of the day, it's still a simple scripting language that you can learn the basics in as you learn HTML and CSS. And like you said earlier, like you're not gonna I don't know, ruin your life if you break a web page that you have on your local machine. Like nothing's gonna happen. Just like play around, see what happens. Throw in a little 2 + 2 equation, see what happens. If it comes out 5, then maybe rewrite your code. But there is really just so much you can do. I mean, even going into something that we will have to do a whole episode on, but the magic of APIs and like
Yeah.
Communication between servers for data. It's
Right.
massive what you can do, because sometimes JavaScript is so under the hood that you don't even it's all under the hood really. You don't really see what's going on. You don't see the code, but you do see these transitions and magical effects. But a lot of these things that you don't even think about, they're just so important to actually all the data flowing through the internet. A lot of it is JavaScript, and it really depends on what person built it and everything. But yeah, it is a really important language, and I do recommend that you learn it as you're learning HTML and CSS.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said, JavaScript is something that has so much power. You can do so much with it, and like with its functionality, like you can update the content of elements on a page, based on predefined criteria, like with you're within the script itself. So it's something that you can really start off small, and then there's really no limit. But I was going to ask you, so since you've had, some recent interviews, what kind of questions did they ask you about? I don't know if you just want to talk about like JavaScript, but like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I think that would be kind of helpful, because obviously, I've heard some stories of interviews where they give you like a big project that you might have to go all out. And I feel like that's abuse. But, for the purpose of gauging how well your candidate is versed in those topics, they definitely test you on it. So like, what kind of questions do you get or did you get, for like these topics?
First one that comes to mind. So like the interviewer would say, okay, write a function that reverses a string, which isn't too difficult at all. But then FizzBuzz is a very classic one, which is where you have to print out 1 to 100. So you just write a function that just makes the terminal just go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 100. But every time a number is divisible by 3, it has to be fizz. And then every time a number is divisible by 5, it has to say buzz instead of that number. And then if it's a number divisible by both, then it has to be fizz buzz. So it would be 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, like, and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh. Gotcha.
That's a super, super popular one, and it's really not hard to code at all once you've learned the basics of JavaScript. Objects, data structural stuff, it depends on the role you're applying for it. I've gotten such a wide range of questions, but...
As far as like HTML and CSS, do you ever get those?
Well, yeah. Even for those roles, like a front-end role, for sure, you're going to get those questions. Maybe a more applicable question might be... Okay, let's say you want to highlight every other row in, I don't know, some table that is on a web page for users. So like every other row is like yellow.
Oh, okay.
You would have to write a function to do that. So you might do something like, there's so many different ways you could do it. You could have like a class set where like you set each row that's odd equal to odd, and then one or the other one's equal to even, something like that. So that would be like the more front end approach. And then maybe a different approach would be having this modulus operator where if like x modulus 2 equals 0, then it's even. And then you just like, you do else, then it's highlighted. So like, it just depends on the approach. But that's just what comes to mind, I guess.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, to see, because it's probably still fresh on your mind, like since you had some of those interviews recently. But yeah, I know that like a while back, I had an interview where it was for a .NET job. And I had never done anything. And I told them flat out, I was like, look, I don't have any experience. But they wanted to go ahead and, do an interview just to give it a chance. It was for like a more of an entry level position anyway. So I was like, okay, well, that shows that, they're willing to groom someone. So that's cool. So during the interview, it was kind of, unfortunately, it wasn't I think the most smooth experience, because the interviewer was sharing his screen and he gave me like remote control to, to his computer. So whatever I typed was showing on the screen, but there was a lag for me. So it was kind of like really clunky. But yeah, it was like, creating a .NET, I don't know, a website or whatever it was. I don't even remember. Never looked into it after. But to like update, an age 1 tag on like an age in HTML file. Mm-hmm. And yeah, no, it was, it was very cool. But yeah, there's so many questions. And for initial interviews, I think that it's very plausible that you would get something, like that. Like that they'll probably prepare you and say, yeah, you might get, like a couple of technical questions, and then you might get like, later on, if they want to carry on the process with you, you might even get like a take-home project or something. But I think for, a beginner, you can definitely be prepared for like questions if you're applying for a web dev role, especially if it's front end, that you're going to get, things or like questions about tags and, the premise of HTML and CSS and even JavaScript, like you said, like reversing a string, maybe printing like a quick little function to print like a palindrome, to check whether a word is a palindrome. Yeah, like, there's so many things out there. I think a good way to prepare for those would be to, like you said, look at what are the most common interview questions for, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So
that's exactly what I did. And sure enough, those questions came up for like every single interview. So,
right.
As broken as it is, because some of these questions are things that you're never going to have to know ever. You can just Google it later, as we have done a whole episode on. But, still essential for some reason. But that was our quick overview of front-end development. I recommend that people just take it step by step. Start with HTML, then go into CSS, and then once you like get basic understandings of each one, then you can totally move on to JavaScript and really, really try to learn that, because that is this point where if you don't really learn it too deeply, then things are going to start getting maybe a little confusing once you start building things on your own, and it's going to be really difficult to have a big picture idea of what you need to do before you actually execute your plan. But take it step by step. So I recommend that you either start by just opening up Word or text editor and just typing the stuff in, or you can just as easily download some sort of code editor like an IDE such as Visual Studio Code, which is Anna's preference, I know. But there's also Atom or Sublime. They're all really fine. They're all going to do the job. But it is nice because once you do have those, you just run your code, open it with your browser, and you can even have a little live server going, because I know VS Code has a plugin where you can just run your code in the browser live with it opens up a port that you don't have to basically refresh the page every time you make a change. It just does it as you're typing. So that's really nice. And really nice for also when you're learning. So you see exactly what's going on the webpage as you're typing it. And as you said earlier, it's super satisfying to see the results when you're learning a new thing, which is why these 3 languages are a great starting point, because the results are tangible and there are a lot of resources out there that accommodate every person's learning style.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, I think VS Code, especially for a beginner, it's very user friendly. It's not going to scare you too much as some other IDEs that are like, I think, dedicated to web development and deployment. Like you don't want to worry about version control for now. Git is another topic. So like for, a code editor where you can just, enter your like the contents of your file and maybe have the help of some extensions. I highly recommend, installing like HTML, CSS extensions, just so you can use the shortcuts, but also keep a check on yourself, to make sure that you're, for every opening tag, you have a closing tag. For every curly brace, you have a opening curly brace, you have a closing one. It's really good practice to learn how to do it from scratch, like by hand, because I think that's what happened to me once or twice during interviews is they didn't let me use a code editor. It was like a flat out text editor, like Notepad or whatever it was, text edits on the Mac. So there's no kind of, check to see if you have a closing for every opening tag or brace or whatever.
Brutal.
So, yeah, I know, and that's what they're looking out for. They want to see how detailed you are, how experienced you are. So, it's good to start with the bare bones, but I think once you get into it, like you can really take advantage of the good extensions on VS Code. And it also, teaches some good practices. Like you can create, I think there's an extension called Emmet, where like you literally open a new file before you even save it as a .html file. If you type, HTML and enter, it will already give you like all the tags, like the doc type HTML at the top, and then like a head tag, body tag, and it will give you everything.
That's my go-to.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like, it would take me a long time to think about like the order of every single thing now at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, you are right. You really should learn it from scratch first.
I think it's, just to show that you understand how things work. And then there are a lot of resources, to speed up the process for you, because when you get that job and you start, no one's going to expect you to write your HTML in like a plain notepad or whatever it is, so they'll, you will be able to use whatever you want. And I think that it's very, it's good, a good idea, good practice to find the tool that best works for you and then expand on that, like make it yours. And whenever you get that job, you're going to be familiar with the tools that you already have to use. Obviously, you're going to have to learn whatever it is that they want you to learn there in terms of like how to work the code and all that. But I'm pretty sure that some companies are not going to say, oh no, you can't use VS Code. Like it's one of the most, it's by Microsoft, so it's everywhere. And it's very lightweight, which I think is a good plus. So yeah, VS Code all the way. And they have some cool themes, if you like pretty colors.
Just don't start with Vim.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, in the operating class I'm taking now, we have to SSH into our school server, right? Because it's all Linux.
Yeah.
So we have to, not in the school server, into our VM, because, we're working with like an Android Linux operating system. So in order to like edit the code, I just recently found out that VS Code has an SSH extension, which has been such a blessing, because before I was using Nano to like, write the code in the terminal screen, save it, and then run it on the terminal to see if it was going to, pass my tests or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this is brutal. This is what people used to do. Because yeah, Vim and Nano, I think that they're like pretty close. I mean, it's like coding in the terminal, so.
Yeah, it's rough stuff. I don't use Vim. I mean, maybe one day once I'm really, really an expert of some kind. I haven't earned the right to actually at work use Vim. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Right. No, yeah. I think VS Code is something that they recommended to us back in the... Actually, I first started using Sublime Text. That was my first one. And then I transitioned. I still have it installed. And then I transitioned to Code. And then I got into some of the integrated development environments, by JetBrains, like... what is it? WebStorm, PHP Storm,
PyCharm,
CLion, all that stuff. And, they're very good. Before, all intents and purposes of like an intro, you really don't need all of that yet. Yeah, VS Code is great. Sublime is very good. It's open source too, which is very cool. And yeah, I mean, pick your flavor. There's so many that you can choose from.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything to recommend for the listeners?
I think, well, still still tied into, just to wrap up like the HTML talk and all that stuff, a couple of resources that I wanted to list out that were helpful for me preparing for the bootcamp and even after were during and after was freecodecamp.com or .org. It's a very cool platform. They've been getting better and better. And, as you work through and progress through the tasks, you can get like certificates on how to on your improvements, your accomplishments. So it's very cool. It keeps you motivated. Another one is W3 Schools, very cool, resource for a wide array of computer science topics. It can be object-oriented programming, but it can be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I was even using that resource for, this refactoring of my portfolio page just recently. And another one is Udemy. I really like Udemy. Some you can get free sometimes, or even $10 courses on there for people that really know what they're talking about, and you can learn some good stuff on there. And good old Google, or even physical books. I have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript textbooks, with me that I used, I think, during the bootcamp too. So that's what I have to recommend in terms of that. I don't know. You go first. I don't know if I have anything, like our end of the episode recommendation yet. I'll think of something, but you go first.
It's actually a talk from NDC 2020, which is the Norwegian Developers Conference. And It's a talk. It's probably the most famous talk from the whole conference ever. It was given by Dylan Beatty, and it's called The Art of Code. Have you seen? I think you've seen. It's like that. It's on YouTube probably. It's that thumbnail. It's like a matrixy looking picture. It's black and green. It says The Art of Code.
I might have. That sounds very familiar.
Well, it's in this talk.
Did he write a book?
He probably did. Super cool dude.
Yeah.
He does this talk about the origins of programming as an art to actually make people smile and laugh. So it includes like live coding as a performance, writing programs that print their own source code, and other little quirky things within the programming world. So that's like what he focuses on. And I don't know, if even if you don't know like anything about coding, I think it's so cool to watch because it points out these funny little oddities within coding, and it also goes into art and how people have been developing and doing artsy things. It's just so cool. I highly recommend it. It's a great video, and there's music involved too. Super cool. Such a funny guy too.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can appreciate someone with a humor, especially if you're talking about programming. It makes it all the better.
Oh yeah, he's such a god. He's like a typical I don't know, 70s rock star looking dude with a ponytail and a beard.
Oh, wow.
But
that's awesome.
Just such an eloquent, beautiful talk, and it's funny. And I don't know if this isn't a spoiler, but he plays guitar in it.
Ooh.
And codes at the same time.
No way.
Yeah, it's insane. You just have to check it out.
Oh man, I'll have to. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Well, I can't think of anything really concrete, that I can recommend other than the fact that based on what we discussed, for, anyone who is curious, if you're willing to, and you want to try out, HTML, CSS, even if you don't, go into a web development career, just to have some fun, open up Microsoft Word, type hello world, and save that file as a, HTML extension, and then open it on your browser. You'll see what I'm talking about. There's just something really cool about that. That's all, I think the motivation that I needed when I first started this whole thing. It's been years now, and I think, there's still some magic. Hello World was the first program ever written. It just, it's how things really, really start.
Is that the story behind it?
That's how it all started.
I was wondering why, like, I mean, I get it. Like, whenever you learn a language, your first thing is to just make something print to the screen or the terminal. And it is usually Hello World just by, I don't know, cultural preference. I thought initially, I didn't realize, like,
I
somebody
think
chose that, like, Hello World.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know if it was like the first program ever written or if it was like the first JavaScript or the first thing ever written to the
Yeah.
browser. It could, we'll have to probably fact check that, but it's definitely a first for a reason. That's why it is known as, it's still like an example
It
for
could have been our guy, Tim Berners. Who knows?
maybe. Yeah,
I'm
you're
going to look
right.
right now. Okay, Brian Kernighan actually wrote the first Hello World program as part of the documentation for the BCPL programming language developed by Martin Richards. BCPL was used while C was being developed at Bell Labs a few years before the publication of Kernighan and Ritchie's C book in 1972. As part of the research for a book, I was writing about the Alice programming environment. I corresponded with both Professor Kernighan at Princeton and Martin Richards at Cambridge. They helped me to track the first documented use of code to print the message Hello World. Brian Kernighan remembered writing the code for part of the I/O section of the BCPL manual. Martin Richards found the manual and confirmed that this was the original appearance of the program. The code was used for early testing of the C compiler and made its way into Kernighan and Ritchie's book. Later, it was one of the first programs used to test Barney Stroustrup's C++ compiler.
Ah, okay. So the first program written in C for input output. That's very cool, though. And like you said, in the 70s. So that happened a
Crazy.
long, long time ago. Yeah. So just do that. Save a file, wherever you want to write, like whatever text, app you have on your computer, as long as you save it, as an HTML file with those words, hello world or hello your name here, whatever, and then you'll be able to open it on your browser. It's all it takes. I think that it's very cool how it can be so simple and then you can expand on that, so I think that those are my 2 cents. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. I think I hope that someone takes away something from this. Yeah.
At least it maybe paints a better picture of what is going on when you actually open the website you go on every day that you've never really thought about, which, most people don't really care about. They just want it to work. And then if it doesn't work, they go, what the heck, dude? Like, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
It's so simple. But I don't know. Maybe now you have a better idea of everything that goes on, just even maybe on a simple page that you are reading a story about. So just cool stuff to think about. Any last words, Anna?
No, I think that is pretty much it. So I hope everybody has a good week.
Actually, before we close out, I do have a super weird, funny story. So we've been apartment hunting,
Okay.
and we've been checking out a few different places, and apartment hunting is really fun to me. I love going to like check out places and houses or whatever. Just basic human right, shelter. It's just cool to see cool different places. So we checked out this place, and so far it's our number one choice, but their amenities are just off the charts insane. There's a sauna, a super nice gym, a golf simulator,
Damn.
and there's a sensory deprivation tank.
That's what you would like to do on a Sunday afternoon if you're in the mood for that.
Isn't that crazy? Like, it was
funny.
It was so interesting. We just like, she's like, all right, now we're just gonna walk in here. I'm like, oh, this isn't a unit, and we walk in. It's all tile with this big egg sitting in the middle.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So
That's
trippy.
interesting.
Just like rainbow colored water, and she's like, yeah, you just hop in and chill out for an hour and don't think about anything. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I want to try it without it. I've always wanted to try it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna wait for this whole pandemic thing to chill out. I get my second shot I get my second shot in a few days actually.
Ooh, yeah. I was actually just because here in Florida, the Orange County mayor lowered the age to like 40 plus, but there's definitely a way you can get around that. My sister just scheduled herself an appointment to go get, her first shot, and I want to look into getting mine as well because I had COVID last year in the summer. But there's a chance that you can contract the virus again. So I don't want to leave that to chance. So I need to, to get on that. Hopefully this week I'll be able to schedule it. I think one of our neighbors was able to schedule it, and at my company people have been able to get it. So I think we're definitely making really good headway as a country to get people vaccinated. So please get your shots.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't feel like anything. The shot, I thought it was going to hurt a little more than it did. Didn't feel like anything. I'm not stoked about the second shot because everybody says that, that's when you actually start feeling symptoms and everything. But I don't know. It's gonna be fun to actually get it out of the way and be able to get a little closer to normalcy. So I actually do have a big announcement.
Okay.
I accepted a new offer.
Oh, you did.
I'm starting at a new company March 31st.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm very excited to be starting. It's a local company, super big, but they have a big office here, so it's gonna be a great new opportunity. I loved everybody I interviewed with. I really seemed to fit in. Everybody was super nice and really like found a good position for me too, because I actually originally applied for a data analyst position, and then I got cut in the final round after like 4 or 5 interviews. It was between me and one other person.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the job. And I was a little bummed, but I was like, you know what, it's fine. Like, I'm stoked for whoever got it. They probably are going to do better than I would have. And then the person was like, well, actually, I'm calling to tell you that. And I'm also calling because another position came up and we actually want you to apply for it because we really, really think you would do well at this company because we all really like you. So I was like, all right, why not? So I go through the process again. I do like 4 or 5 interviews. And after a lot of that, I got accepted and offered a job there. So I'm really stoked to be starting soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna say, hindsight is 2020, but when you told me that, I had a very good feeling, obviously managing expectations and I definitely had my fingers crossed for you. So I'm very happy that it worked out. And like you said, this is an even better opportunity than the first one. Just very, very impressed that, they had the initiative to keep you in the loop, and you made such a good impression for the first position that you applied for. So, there's like true value into the, that experience that you had with them, and that, they decided to put you up for another role because they recognize your potential. So it just shows that, some companies really know how to do it right. And they recognize the potential of their candidate pool. And yeah, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Congrats.
it. It was I've never been in like communications with a company where they're like, you know what, like you didn't fit this role, but you might fit this one better. We want you to apply for it, and we're gonna do it for you. Like it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I know they're like, very ethically balanced, and they really just care about their employees because everyone I talk to, they're like, yeah, I've been here for like 5 years. I love it. It's a great company to work for. I didn't exactly say what the job was. It's essentially front end, and there's also some QA involved, so quality assurance, but not the Creed Bratton side of QA, the quality Auschwitz.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was gonna say he didn't even know what the title was.
What is it? Quality. But essentially, I'm doing front end development, but I'm also testing code.
That's cool. Well, that's an integral part of the whole process. So that I'm excited, to see what you can share after you start there, and
Me too.
The progress, how it goes. But that's awesome. Very good.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to close it out with that big news. I know I I think I said it like last episode, but I was finally, comfortable enough to actually announce it and make it official since it is coming up super soon. And I go to the office and pick up my equipment soon. So
Yeah.
very, very excited.
Good. Well, I don't have anything else to share, and I'm not going to steal the spotlight. You deserve it.
You were not worthy. All right.
Cheers to that. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, cheers. This has been Tech Heads, episode 7. Peace.